"Who is this Jesus?" On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." The wind ceased, and there was dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe, and said to one another, "Who is this, then, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Mark chapter 4. In the Hebrew scriptures, it is God alone who has the power to subdue the stormy seas. In creation, he sets limits around the waters, bringing order out of chaos. God tells Job that it is he who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb. Job 38. The writer of the Psalms praises the God of salvation. Silence the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves. And he made the storm be stilled, and the waves of the sea were hushed. Psalm 65 and Psalm 107. But despite the mastery over the wind and the storm, the sea remains for many of the biblical writers a place of huge threat and great danger. The mysterious sea monster Leviathan dwells there. Describing his vision of heaven in the New Jerusalem, St. John the Divine says that this dangerous sea was no more. In the opening chapters of St. Mark's Gospel, the Sea of Galilee has already been a place of an encounter with Jesus, of his call, of the beginning of a new life. It is by the sea that Jesus calls Simon and Andrew, then James and John. It is by the sea that a crowd presses in on him, almost crushing him. He heals many, and the unclean spirits fall down before him and cry out, "You are the Son of God." They are the first to recognize him as such and to accord him this title, which points to his divinity. Now, in Mark, in chapter 4, it is Jesus who does what God alone can do. He calms the wind and the waves and causes the storm to cease. He rebukes the wind, just as he had rebuked the unclean spirit in chapter 1. Mark uses exactly the same word. Then those who saw the spirit cast out were amazed and asked themselves, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits that obey him." Now the disciples were filled with awe, and they ask, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" We can see, even if the disciples cannot, where Mark is leading us. Every word, every deed in these early chapters help the readers of this gospel to understand that it is Jesus, nothing less than the presence and power of God, that is at work. Jesus contrasts the faith that the disciples should have, but that they clearly lack, with the fear that they all too clearly demonstrate. Faith and fear form a pair of opposites throughout St. Mark's Gospel. In chapter 6, the disciples are again in a boat at sea, this time struggling against the headwind. Jesus appears to them, walking on the water, and says, "Do not be afraid." The Gospel famously ends with women at the tomb who, rather than having faith that Jesus has risen, flee from the tomb and say nothing to anybody, for they were afraid. To read St. Mark's Gospel, then, is to accept the evangelist's invitation to be a disciple who has faith, not fear. Faith in Jesus, who stills the storm. Faith in Jesus, who is so filled with the fullness of the divine power and authority that we know him to be nothing less than God. Faith in Jesus, who is truly risen and goes out before us into Galilee, into the world of our own storm-filled lives and experience, where Jesus alone can bring peace and banish fear. St. Augustine, reflecting on this passage, suggests that the episode at sea signifies the drama of the Christian life. All of us, who are God's children, embark with Christ on a life that is full of dangerous storms. so that it is we who must learn to trust Jesus daily, who alone can bring us safe harbour. Action. How do we respond to this? What are we afraid of? What do we need Jesus to still and speak of peace? Let's end with a prayer, the prayer of Saint Jane de Chantal. Be within me, every part, in my mind, my voice, my heart, in my mouth, on my lips, even my fingertips. Christ be in my eyes and ears, to bless my joys, to calm my fears. Amen.